And that's why companies like Tesla, Starbucks, McDonald's, they're great at this, right? If you're going into an Apple store in San Francisco, if you're going into Apple store in Miami or Beijing or New York, they all look the same. The packaging feels the same. They smell the same. The experience is the same. And that is what we are bringing to our clients.
Welcome to the Veteran-Led Podcast, where we talk with leaders who use their military experiences to develop great organizations and continue to serve their communities. Today's guest is former Army combat medic turned armor officer and founder and CEO of OMNICOMMANDER. Welcome to the show, Eric Isham.
Hey, thanks, John. Appreciate it, brother.
I want to get down to what OMNICOMMANDER does and why you have such a diverse array of services.
So OMNICOMMANDER is the leader for website design, digital marketing for banks and credit unions in the United States. We really focus in on the credit union space. We've been doing this for about 7 years. And I started this company when I recognized a gap for really gorgeous mobile responsive websites in the credit union space. And so that's where we started off with. That quickly led into digital marketing from social media, SEO, email, custom video creation, paid ads, you name it, we do it on the marketing side, as well as cybersecurity as well, right? So a lot of our small to mid-sized financial institutions, they don't have the bandwidth or the budgets to really come out and combat effectively cybersecurity services. So we bring all that together for our clients in an easy to understand, easy to deploy solution that's been very, very effective.
Yeah, cost-effective cybersecurity is difficult. And for us as a law firm, cybersecurity is paramount. We have to protect our client information and our client data. And I know the banking industry is very strict on their standards as well. So how do you manage both sides of the house? Do they run almost as separate companies, or is it just another vertical? Or do you usually integrate all three with most of your customers?
It's a great question. So I hired one of my old armor officer buddies, Roy Ross. He's our Chief Information Security Officer. So we've got a CISO at OMNICOMMANDER that handles all of our security. So if we're using any kind of third-party software, if we're looking at a new relationship, Roy comes and checks the validity of that third party and really makes sure that it's good to hook for us as an organization. His second role is as a division within OMNICOMMANDER, and that's cybersecurity. We call it Cyber Commander. So he puts together functional cybersecurity tools, phishing, educational resources for our banks and credit unions so that they can know what to be on the lookout for, right? There's a lot of text messages that aren't really from UPS or from Amazon, and people get got with that stuff all the time. So on the cybersecurity side, there's two sides of the house on that. Ours, OMNICOMMANDER Cybersecurity, ensuring that we are protecting our data and our clients' data, but then also helping the education side for those banks and credit unions as well.
When we first met, you had almost your entire C-suite was military officers. Is that still true today?
Yeah, we're very heavy military. So we're a veteran-founded, veteran-led organization. My early employees, my first employee, he was an Air Force guy. We definitely give him a lot of about that. But I've got Navy guys. I've got Coast Guard guys. Those guys really get a lot of from us. But we've even had Marines along the way, and we set out their box of crowns for those guys. But no, I love it. I love hiring veterans. I think it's great. It's they certainly have a sense of duty. They certainly have a sense of purpose and mission when they come into the organization. We do a lot of things that I learned and that my other leaders learned with their time in the military that we execute here at OMNICOMMANDER on an ongoing basis.
And you've been recognized as a United States Department of Labor Gold Medallion recipient for hiring vets under their Hire Vets program. And so that speaks to your mission and what you're doing. And as we've talked off the air over the last few months, hiring veterans is crucial to having a great organization. We can have honest conversations, and we have people who know how to execute on our team, and people who know how to delegate. And so there are a lot of leadership skills that we've learned in the military. Let me put it this way. If we didn't have them on our team, it'd be game over. But because we're hiring people who already have those skills, it makes it so much easier to scale. And I know you've scaled quickly. Right now, you're in 3 states and 1 foreign country?
That's right. Yeah, as far as offices go. So I'm sitting right now at our flagship location in Nashville, Tennessee. Our headquarters is based in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, in the Panhandle. We've got our cybersecurity offices. We call it Cybertron. That's in Salt Lake City. And then we have a fourth location. Our international location is in Bogota, Colombia. We call that Casa Morada. And we got commandos down there that are doing the thing on a daily basis.
How did you decide to niche down to credit unions? You become a leader in the credit union industry, but how did you make that decision to go so narrow?
I think that well, first I got tricked into it like anybody else in industry. So I was pre-med in college, so I was going to go to medical school, and when I graduated, all those plans were in place. My wife was in pharmaceutical sales at the time, and I don't think she really wanted to support me through all the additional school that was going to have to happen there. And my aunt, who was in financial technology at the time, she had the greatest line ever. She said, Eric, why don't you come work for me and you can take a break from school? And I was like, man, a break sounds good. And this was the closing line. This is the greatest closing line of all time. She's like, you know what? Come work for me for a year. And if you don't like it, you can always go to medical school. It's not going anywhere. And I was like, that sounds good too. So I jumped into that based on her company. And I'd actually worked for her previous to when I was in high school. So I started in the 90s in a payments company doing stuffing checks in the basement of her company. So I've been doing this for, it's crazy to say, almost 30 years in the space. And it's one of those things that the people don't really leave the space once you're in here. You might change, where you work at, but you typically stay in here because it's a wonderful place to be at. Specifically in the credit union land, it's a small industry. There's about 4,700 credit unions in the U.S. today, and it's a very tight community. So if you are providing amazing service, incredible products, they will quickly go out of their way to promote you. And so I've always had a high level of integrity and repped companies and built products that really did mean something, right? Not vaporware, not sugar water. And it's been a wonderful journey for me, right? As staying in this space for so long and being niche. So when I founded OmniCommander, I made the conscientious decision. I was like, I want to build gorgeous websites. I can do that for anybody, right? I could do it for you, John. I could do it for the car lot down the street. I could do it for the movie theater. But I wanted to focus on the market I already knew, and they were way behind. A majority still way behind when it comes to absolute gorgeous design that's mobile responsive, that's ADA compliant, that has all the things that they need to drive their business. And trust me, it's a tough thing. We've had several people over the years that come here and say, oh man, we should be doing this for car dealerships, or we should be doing this for funeral parlors, or you name it, right? It's like, it's wide open. I'm like, yeah, it's great, but we've got more business than we could probably ever handle right here in this space. Let's just be the best for our banks and our credit unions and really understand and know this. So we try to be really true to that. Every once in a while, we'll do something that's a one-off for somebody that works at a credit. We did a free website for a hospital in Hawaii. But it was something because one of the CEO of that credit union was like on the board for the hospital. I was like, yeah, we'll do that. We're not going to charge you a dime. We like doing those things. But as far as our core business, banks and credit unions.
Well, and what I found is you are very concerned about your reputation. You're not going to take a project that you don't think you can handle. I know we've had some discussions, and you've helped me and other veterans saying, hey, here's what I think you need right now. But not being the guy, oh, I need your business, because you don't need our business. And I think that takes a lot of maturity and discipline, because it's easy to say, well, here's another opportunity for us to grow, to make more money, hire more employees. But at the end of the day, if we're not serving our core customer, then we're absolutely failing. And I'm sure you've been there. I've looked at other verticals and I've launched some of them that were catastrophic failures. So now we like you, we only have 3 verticals. And that has been I think one of the most important things in our ability to scale, hire great people, and continue to grow. And so you guys have great, like I said, great discipline there. And what I also like is you guys understand that like the information isn't what matters. What matters is the ability to execute. And I've watched some of your team's YouTube videos, and you guys get really tactical. You give away all the secret sauce. But at the end of the day, right, as I've learned from a lot of marketing companies, strategies are pretty cheap. It's the ability to execute on those strategies that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We do a town hall every Friday. It's an all-hands town hall with all of our employees around the world. and we were showing a recent website that went live, and we'd done a brand guide for them. And I know you're big about your brand as well. And so I was on a call yesterday, and I was talking to a prospect in our space, and I said, he was really wanting us to do a website for him. I was like, this is great, but we really need to have a brand guide established first. And so I said, let me show you a brand guide for a credit union we just recently did. And so my senior vice president of marketing, you've met her, Christy, she shows him this brand guide that we built. It's gorgeous, right? And these are the fonts, and these are the colors, and this is the imagery we're going to use, and these are the overlays that we're going to use. And he was like, wow, that's really, really cool. Then we showed him the website. He's like, it just snapped. He's like, oh, I get it. We were able to build a gorgeous website for this credit union, taking the rules from the brand guide. And so we were showing this because the site recently went live. I think it was earlier this week, last week, to the whole team. And I told everybody, I said, it looks really easy. And what I've learned is the easier something looks when you're presenting it, it's actually the harder it is to pull off, right? To have something that has an omnipresent, a unique and continuous look and feel across all channels. If you're on a website, if it's physical, if it's whatever, it's an incredible amount of work to pull that together. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. And you're right. So strategy is fairly cheap, right? You've got to spend some time on that and get that down. But the execution of it, getting everybody rowing in the same direction, all the arrows pointed in the same direction, that's a daily effort, right? Because the second somebody starts answering the phone a little bit differently, or they're sending emails with a different tone, or they're sending out marketing materials that's a little outdated, it completely destroys the brand. And that's why companies like Tesla, Starbucks, McDonald's, they've really crushed Apple. They're great at this, right? If you're going into an Apple store in San Francisco, if you're going into Apple store in Miami or Beijing or New York, they all look the same. The packaging feels the same. They smell the same. The experience is the same. And that is what we are bringing to our clients. And it is a ton of work to make that happen.
Yeah, if you have a business and you haven't, I don't care what the size, if you haven't yet established your brand guide, you're going to regret it down the road. And to keep everything in line, it's very much like having a tax op, that tactical standard operating procedures that the team can flip through the tax op and understand what right looks like. To understand how to effectively run this battle drill, right? It's something that you do over and over again, but you continue to refine. And in working especially in the marketing space, just as from my vantage point, it's like, we got to do a lot of rehearsals. We got to make sure that we can do a soft launch of something, but we need to take it through the paces and look at it, evaluate it, and decide if it's on brand. Is this really going to move the needle forward? Is this really what we're trying to say? Or is this off brand? Is this something that is going to confuse the consumer?
Yep. Yeah, we do it every day. It's, I meet with my SVP on the digital marketing side, and we kind of go round and round. Like, is this adding to our core messaging? Is this taking away? If somebody that's not in our business all day long, can they look at that at a glance and know exactly what that is? Because sometimes we miss that, right? We start using jargon. We start making assumptions about the consumer. Like, oh yeah, they're going to instantly know what that is. And sometimes you got to take a step back and be like, I don't know if that's as clear as we think it is to the outside world. And I know you guys have done an incredible job of really owning your market there, right? With your commercials and the billboards and everything else you're doing. You got to capture that attention like this as I'm going down the road 85 miles an hour and, see you up there like, okay, I know exactly what he does, right? And it's that repetition, but it's that simple, straightforward. This is what we do. When I have this need, I know specifically I need to go talk to John Barry, right? It's again, it looks simple, but it's very, very hard.
Let's talk about failures because we all have them. What's your biggest failure that you're afraid of, and what's one of the biggest ones that you've had to overcome growing your business, especially at the rate you've been Inc. 5000 list, the fastest growing companies in America 2 years in a row. You can't grow without breaking stuff. So let's get into the failures for the veterans listening who might be concerned about failing.
Yeah, I would tell anybody, the veterans or anybody else that's listening, you can't be afraid of failure. Right? You can't be thinking about, well, what if we do this and it doesn't work? I guess you can, but it doesn't, you don't get any returns on that. And there's a difference between not being afraid of failure and being reckless. I think the biggest failure that I've had, and this is more of a recent failure, is just growing too fast, right? Trying to throw bodies at problems instead of really solving for processes. Our back of the house, our development operations, which is led by our president, Kimberly, my wife, they've got incredible SOPs that they've built out over the past several years, 7 years, right? They've been building them since day one. And when we bring on a net new client for a website, like they've got everything lined down, right? Boom, 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 boom. And it's very structured and it works, right? They've got those rails greased up and they're moving. It's not that same thing when we look at marketing, because it's a different type of creative. And, as we're bringing on lots and lots of clients, my go-to is always like, just hire till it hurts. Keep hiring. There should be a line of people that we're hiring continuously to throw at this growth. And, the world changed 18 months ago when it kind of comes to what people are valuing and how they're valuing companies. And it's not all about just growth and top line revenue, sometimes, or it's getting to more bottom line and looking at that. So that's probably been the biggest, failure that affects a lot of people, is just with fast growth, just thinking you could throw bodies at people, not building out that more defined SOP. I tell my staff, I tell everybody all the time, I probably make more mistakes than most humans walking every morning than most people do all month long, right? Because I'm making so many decisions and we are moving so fast. And I tell my staff, I'm like, guys, it's okay if you're making mistakes, if you break something, if you drop something, if something happens. What's not okay is not to own it, right? If you make a mistake with a client and they come calling or they're emailing you, you better answer that phone call in the first ring. You better respond to that email within 5 minutes, because making a mistake's fine. That's not a problem. But trying to hide from it or run from it, that doesn't work, right? So make mistakes, continue to move fast, continue to grow, learn from your mistakes. Right? I don't want you to keep doing the same thing. That's insanity. But don't be afraid of making mistakes. And I think we've got a culture here. We've built a culture here where people try things and they're not afraid of, making a mistake. Yes, I might use adult language and raise my voice when it's happened multiple times, but like I don't ever, personally get upset with anybody about that.
Yeah, sometimes we get upset about the situation, but not with the person. And as leaders, it's really tough to make that distinction, because then someone says, oh my gosh, you were so upset with me. No, I'm not upset with you. I don't take this personally. You shouldn't take it personally. We're upset with the situation. We're upset with the fact we were frustrated, but we're going to fix it. And I think that's going to happen with decisions. And as leaders, it's not what we decide, it's that we decide, that we make a decision, we live with the consequences, and we learn from that. That's always better than just waiting to make a decision till we have enough information or till the right time. Look, as a leader, if you can't move the momentum forward, you're not really leading. And if you lose momentum, man, it is tough to get it back. Now, you talked about the mistakes, but let's talk about the unforgivable ones. I learned a lesson as a young lieutenant that there are mistakes of skill and there are mistakes of will. And mistakes of skill are fine. That just means more training. But if it's a mistake of will, where someone is doing something that is intentional, reckless, that is harming the company, harming the customer, they got to go. You can't fix that.
That's right. Yeah, we've got core values here that we check against. And one of them being integrity. We've got a zero tolerance, a one strike rule when it comes to stealing. Right now, we're a tech company. We don't have like a cash drawer somewhere where somebody can steal from you. But if they are cooking their numbers as far as their metrics for, SEO views or what's another one would be chat results. We had a situation last summer, actually, where we had some people that were fudging their rankings. They were logging in and they were ranking themselves on their chats that were juicing their numbers so they could get paid, higher spiffs for those things. And once the team was aware of it, it was immediate. It was like, they got to go. That's stealing, right? We've got an employee ownership plan here where it's a 1-year cliff, 4-year vest. So I've got a lot of people within the organization. Actually, we're doing a shareholder meeting after this. We've got a lot of folks here that are owners in the company. And damn it, they take that seriously, right? So when they find out somebody's been stealing from them or they've been doing something to waste money, a will type of a thing, right? It's a pretty immediate and swift decision on that. Like, they got to go, right? We're not going to tolerate that for a second, because we've got big goals and we've got things that we need to accomplish, because we've got a finite amount of time to do those things. And and I've been big about this my whole life. I just have no tolerance for stealing whatsoever.
Well, and I love the reference to stealing because I wasn't articulate enough to put that word on it, but I had something similar where a leader was manipulating metrics to make it look like they were more productive than they were. And
Stealing.
Of course, yeah, that's stealing. And for me, that's being deceptive. And it came down to when you have to have that conversation, it's like, okay, you've read all the guidelines, you're in a leadership position, either you are intentionally doing this or stealing, or if I buy your explanation, you're too dumb to be in a leadership position because there is we've written these guidelines so clearly. We've clearly defined the KPI and you come in and now you're trying to manipulate it. And then there's a story behind it. And we're like, yeah, that story doesn't make sense. And that's such a tough position to be in because, we entrusted this leader and now we as a senior leadership look like failures because we entrusted the wrong person. But I've learned that the team will forgive that, so long as we don't tolerate it, right? Sometimes we're going to make bad decisions. We're not going to be as discerning as we need to be as leaders, and we're going to choose the wrong people to put in charge. But when we figure out that it's the wrong person, justice must be swift. We can't let things linger because the team sees it, the team feels it, and they knew about it long before we did. And maybe nobody said anything, but it's just one of those things as a leader, we got to be transparent and say, yeah, this is not right. This is something that happened, and this is an expensive lesson. But I love to share the lessons, and sometimes it's painful because if the person's still on the team, I try not to call them out. But it's like, look, we all have to learn from this lesson because this happened. This is not okay, and we want to make sure it never happens again. So we're going to tell you what happened, and we're going to talk about why it's such a problem and why it must never happen again.
Yeah, I love that. This gets back to the military too, right? If you got to make on-the-spot corrections because if you don't, and it's a known thing, that just became the standard, right? So if Sally's allowed to come in late 30 minutes a day, every single day, and everybody's looking at that, then it's like, okay, once the leadership team is aware of that and they're condoning it, they're allowing it to happen, then everybody else is like, well, that's the new standard. I can show up 30 minutes late. Maybe I can show up 35 minutes late. Maybe I don't have to show up at all, right? Just keep pushing. And it's not fair to those folks that are here 30 minutes early and they're scrapping up and getting ready for the day because it just interrupts the rest of the flow. So I agree with you 100%. And I encourage everyone, right? Doesn't matter if you're in leadership or not, but you got to make on-the-spot corrections. Like, hey, that's not appropriate. That's not the way we do things. That's not it. Because we cannot, as leaders, let the rest of the organization or society say like, yep, that's okay. You can't walk past that and not check that if you know something's not right.
Yeah, the standard you allow is the standard you set. And where I have failed is I had a manager who liked to keep notes and then every quarter would bring up all the negative stuff. So instead of making the on-the-spot correction, they would allow it to happen for 30, 60, 90 days. They'd allow it to continue to happen, and then they just have a whole list. So not only did the problem persist much longer than it needed to, but then that team member who maybe didn't know that they were doing something wrong or felt they were getting away with it, they show up for their quarterly review, and there's a whole list. On this date, this happened. On this date, I'm like, whoa, that's not how we manage that, and that certainly isn't how we lead. If there's a problem, we address it immediately, but we don't keep a naughty list. We don't keep, this is Santa's naughty list right here of everything you did wrong, because that's crushing to a team member, especially if they didn't know they were wrong. You got to make the on-the-spot corrections. This was like rule number one in the military. You learn this from the drill sergeant who dropped you for not squaring a corner, from walking through the grass, or whatever you did talking in the chow hall. And so we learned that on-the-spot correction is huge. And look, when we deploy, on-the-spot corrections save lives.
Yeah. What I've learned, John, is that management is something that is taught, right? That is trained. And most people don't really want to lean into doing those types of corrections, right? I don't think most people are afraid. It's just very uncomfortable to tell somebody else that they're doing something wrong.
Unless it's your spouse, right?
Oh, yeah. No, she has no problem letting me know, or the kids. So, but it as a manager, and that's a trained thing, right? And we do a lot of management training here. And again, it's not because you're correcting somebody or you're making an edit or suggestion, whatever it is. It's not a personal thing, right? It gets back to that personal thing. It's like, no, that's 4 + 4 is 8, right? If you wrote down 7 and you're correcting that, it's like, oh, he hates me. It's like, no, that's math, right? Like this is not how that works. And but most people, I do think, are a little bit shyer as far as like, I'm going to try to let that slide and hope it doesn't happen again. And I certainly, I know, come off as an asshole. It's like, man, he's always telling this or he's doing that, just because I don't have the time to circle around later. I certainly don't have the time to make notes for a quarter and then come back and do it. It's easier to just say, hey, button your button, or your zipper's undone, or whatever it is, right? And like you said, basic training. It's funny. I'm pretty sure I got gigged just for showing up. But yes, I mean, I did more push-ups in basic training than who knows how many. I mean, millions of push-ups, right? Continuously. And I probably earned every last one of them.
How do you deal with the team member, especially the leader, who argues with reality, who comes in and tells you, no, Eric, 4 plus 4 is not 8, 4 plus 4 is 7. And you're like, well, that's not reality. I'm trying to show you reality, but they just can't see it. How do you handle that?
Well, I make sure that we move them to the creative department, then they can make those numbers whatever they want to. That's a great question. I like to have open conversations, and if it's something solid like that, if it's 4 plus 4 is 7, then it's just like, okay, then this just isn't a good fit, which is very different than constructive criticism around an open topic. But yeah, we just move on from it, right? If somebody just can't get over our hours, or that we're work from the office, or that we do whatever it is, it's like, okay, it's the wrong person in the potential right seat, and we move on from it. And the faster you can get to that, the faster that you can make those decisions. It's just better. And it's tough when you're in the moment, but it's always like 24 hours, 48 hours later, you get all kinds of people kind of saying, hey, I'm glad you guys did that. That dude was an asshole. And it's like, well, why did you say that before? Or, hey, that person was causing problems, or that guy was scaring me. And it's like, what? How did I miss this stuff? Right? So I think it's, when something's not a good fit, it. You can tell anything you want in your head, but it.
Yeah, and sometimes we think that, well, there's an SOP, they need to be following the SOP, but then we as leaders have failed to train them on the SOP, or worse, our SOP is no longer relevant and needs to be updated. So as a leader, how do you know when your standard operating procedures might be out of date, or need to be updated, or need to be improved to optimize your company? So
all my direct reports are very good about vocalizing those things, right? So if we've outgrown an SOP, or if we've moved on from something, then I'll typically get a collective unison on that. Like, hey, this just doesn't work anymore. We need to change that, right? I'm very fortunate in that manner. Like, we'll have those open conversations around that. I don't think that's a problem that we experience too much, or that I see. The bigger problem, going a half step back, what you're just talking about, is when I'm giving directives and they're clear in my head, but a direct report isn't pushing back to say, I don't understand what you're saying, right? So not being as clear in those directives, and then them not stopping me and saying, hey, Eric, I know what's coming out of your mouth makes all the sense in the world to you, but I don't really know what you're talking about, right? And we've been spending a lot of time around that recently as well. It's like, if I'm trying to work back briefs from the folks, but it's like, hey, if you're not 100% on what this guidance was, or what I want done with this particular commercial, or this image, or this, that, or the other, just say, hey, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Because what happens is they go away, and then a week later, I'm like, hey, where's that thing? And they're just kind of like, right? So it's being clear as a leader. I think that's one of the biggest things I tell anybody. It's like, just make sure you're getting that back brief from the person. Make sure they have them say, hey, spit back to me what those orders are, or what those directives are.
Yeah, I think as an officer, I wasted way too much time on the operations order trying to make it perfect, and not spending enough time on the back briefs to make sure that the team understood, the leaders understood the plan and the rehearsals. And it seems back briefs are almost as important as the rehearsals, because it really gets you to have that meeting of the minds. Do we understand each other? Is anything unclear? And I have failed at that time and time again. And look, that's one of the first things you learn as a young officer is troop leading procedures, how to give that operations order, how to do the back brief, how to do many rehearsals. And yet in the business world, it's tough to do because it's tough to find the time.
Yeah. Well, you got to find the time though. But I agree with you. It's figuring that piece out. So, I don't have a silver bullet on that. It's something I'm working on. I'm working on it personally every day, right? When I'm meeting with folks, just stopping at the end of those meetings, like, hey, I want to make sure that everybody's got clear directives, what you're going to go work on from this meeting. And are there anything that we've talked about in this that somebody said, like, I don't really know what you mean by that, right? Because it's going to come up. right? In a small organization like this, there's no way you're going to hide from those things. It's going to come up. So I think taking the time to just make sure that we got clarity on mission is important.
So how many direct reports do you have and what positions do they hold?
I've got 7. So I've got a couple of folks that are directly reporting in on the market. I've got a digital marketing person, and I've got a creative marketing person. I've got a client experience. She oversees a large portion of the folks that are working with our clients. I've got a sales leader that's overseeing all of our sales folks as well. We've got an operations person that's overseeing the larger operations at the organization. We've got finance, and then I've got product as well. So that's 7, and then the president reports into me, which would be 8 as well, but she oversees some of that back end stuff too.
Is the president the second in command?
100%. President's first in command, right? So that's where I get my marching orders. We did not have a great sales month last month, and she's like, "Well, I know what you're going to be doing. You can put your CEO title right there for a second. You're going to go be doing sales." And so the past few days, I've jumped back in. I've really been energized by it as well because it's natural. It's a core talent of mine that I can get in there and work those things. So sometimes you gotta do those things and step back into the gap and make sure that it's being done the right way.
So prior to founding OMNICOMMANDER, you worked in the consulting space for about 10 years. Why'd you leave?
I don't know. It was a little less than 10 years. I did consulting. I started a consulting company. I was working with fintech providers on how to spin up sales teams, business development. I did some mergers and acquisitions for a company. I enjoyed that. But at the end of the day, I realized that I can't scale myself in an effective way that I want to for the success I was looking for without having products and services, right? So I certainly could have hired additional consultants and, could have got to some level of success with that. But I really always wanted to have a product. I always wanted to have a service that I could scale on. And that's what we've done here at OMNICOMMANDER. So again, when I was doing a lot of public speaking at that time too, and one of the questions I kept getting, they say, "Hey, you're an expert on payments. Who do you like for this?" Or you know all the cores or the internet banking providers. Who do you go to for websites? And I was always like, "Oh, well, I'm sure you got somebody local that can handle that, or your core processor can handle that, or whoever." And eventually I was like, I need to go and see what's going on with this. What are these people talking about? And I started looking at it, and I was like, "Oh, here's my product. Here it is." Right? Slapped me right in the face. I was like, I know good design. I can do this. And so I taught myself some rudimentary coding, right? So I don't want any of my developers to hear me say that because they make fun of the early websites that I built. But I taught myself how to do it. I called some of the credit unions. I was like, "Hey, listen, your website looks like why don't you let me build you a new one?" And they're like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." And so I did that for a while, and I really fell in love with it. I fell in love with having a product that lived out there in the world. And so that's why, and I kept the consulting business for a while. I had that probably 6 months in at OMNICOMMANDER. I was working with some other fintechs. And the day finally came where I was like, I'm going to have to fire everybody, my clients, so I can 100% focus on OMNICOMMANDER so we can really get the attention and oxygen it needs. And that's a tough day. I don't know if you've ever had to do that or not, where you've had multiple different things, but I made that decision. I discussed that with my wife, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to close down the consulting business." And I had to make those calls to the clients, and they were kind of like, "Wait a minute, I don't understand." I was like, "Yeah, we're not going to do business together anymore because I've got this other entity that I really need to focus on."
Well, and at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for you. And so often we're stuck somewhere and we just want to stay there because it's more comfortable to stay. But you had the courage to step out, and it's gone extremely well for you. Now, I want to take you back to that, but this wasn't, OMNICOMMANDER was not your first entrepreneurial experience. In fact, this goes back to elementary school. So tell us about your first experience.
Yeah, I've always, since I can remember, very early on, been an entrepreneur. So I don't know if you remember the game where you take the pencils and you're like flicking them and you're trying to break the other guy's pencil.
Oh yeah, so you hold it, yeah.
Yeah, you hold it and you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
So that was big at my elementary school. So I got my grandmother to take me to the store, and I bought a box of pencils, right? So this probably was like 50 cents back then, and you got 10 in there or whatever. And then I would sell them for $0.25 per pencil in the bathroom, right? So boys' bath, because that's where we were in there doing that thing at. And so that was my first business where I was starting to bring in boxes and boxes of pencils, and I would be selling them for $0.25 because people had change, because it's like $0.25 for milk and lunch. And so we had that, I had a market there. We had a desire. People were wanting to play this game all the time, and they had the cash. So I did that for a while. I probably did it for a couple of years where I was selling pencils, and then I started making some bracelets. I was doing like these beaded bracelets thing that I was selling as well at school. And I mean, I've probably started over a dozen businesses since then, right? I've done all kinds of things, from little machines, like a vending machine business that I did. And I realized I didn't like going around picking up, that money. And even it was good, it's just, it wasn't not really scalable in the way that I wanted it to doing other types of businesses as well over the years. And it's always excited me. I've always looked at how can I create value, and how can I, make more money as a young entrepreneur. And it was always like, okay, I can do this. I think I had 3 jobs in high school. So I was bagging groceries. I was also doing the groceries at the commissary. I don't know if you remember that, but I'd go out there, work for tips, and then I'd go to McDonald's and work in the off hours from that. So I've just always had that kind of work mentality, and then filling in the gaps with other little businesses and hobbies that I had along the way.
And you've also been involved in a nonprofit. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I started a nonprofit a million years ago. My grandmother passed away, who raised me, from diabetes. And then my younger cousin, who I'm very close to, he got diagnosed with diabetes too. And it's really prevalent in my family. So I was like, I'd like to do something about this. And so we created the 216 Foundation. We raised money for diabetes research. And so we would have these black tie galas in Cincinnati, and we would have other events too, where we would raise money, and then we would take that, and we were purchasing equipment for islet cell research, and it was a lot of fun. That's a lot of personal enjoyment and satisfaction out of that. But running a nonprofit is a lot of time, right? That was the one thing I didn't realize. Talking about failures, I didn't realize how much running a nonprofit, because I had a full-time job at the time, how much time and energy that was. But I think it was personally gratifying for everyone that was involved. I had a great volunteer staff for years and years and years that we would get together and we would throw those events. And we raised quite a bit of money for diabetes research during the time that we ran that.
This takes us to the after-action review, the 3 examples of great leadership and the 3 examples of horrible leadership that you learned either as a military officer, as an enlisted soldier, or as a business owner.
One of the examples of great leadership is it's always by example, right? So like you, I was in combat arms. You get a lot of alpha type people there, very straightforward, very forceful. And, I've always had confidence growing up, but it didn't really unlock until I got into the military. And I had a drill instructor that, really instilled in me that I could do more physically than I ever thought I could prior to the military. And he did that by example. He had hurt his leg or something like that, but we were going out for like a 10-miler or something. He was there. He was leading from the front, and he's like, hey, we can do that. And I learned through those experiences multiple times that I was physically able to do a lot more than I ever would have thought that I could have prior to that, which, obviously that instills some confidence. Another I'll tell you a great story about, again, back into confidence and being bold. I was competing for Junior NCO of the Year, Soldier of the Year. And I had a platoon sergeant, and one of the things is you have to go and you got to knock on the door to go in and report to I think it was the command sergeant major at the time. And he says, all right, I was a specialist. All right, Specialist Isham. He's like, now when you knock on that door, I want you to knock on that door, right? I was like, okay, you get over there, boom, I hammered that door. Command sergeant major's come in, and he's just looking at me. I'm like, Specialist Isham, reporting. He's just looking at me. He's like, okay. And I won that, right? I won Junior NCO of the Year. But I always remember that knocking, and it was just so important to me. And I've taken that with me, right? Being very confident, being bold, being loud, So again, even if you're wrong, people still know that you're there. And I've always carried that with me. And I think the third example of leadership, great leadership that I learned, and this is all, I'm using military for all the stuff because kind of where my head's at right now, is courage. And that is doing the things that I think if we were sitting here calmly talking about it, John, especially today, we probably like, I'm not doing that. But, seeing the guys doing things and you're like, holy shit, we're doing this, right? And just having that courage to stand up and to lean into tough situations that I think if I had never joined the military, I wouldn't have the courage to do some of the things. And that's led into the entrepreneurial side, right? Because, we all know what the ultimate failure is. And as long as that doesn't happen, you're still moving, then you can live to fight again. So I think having those three leadership things that I took from the military, having courage, being bold, and really having the motivation and the understanding what I can do physically that I didn't know before, that means a lot to me. And I can remember multiple leaders in the Army, both as enlisted and as an officer, that really drove that in me. And again, I was blessed to be in combat arms, both sides, as a combat medic and as an armor officer. So I was around a lot of strong NCOs and commanders that, it was, that type of thing. And just like, okay, right. Three examples of failure, I would say all mine, right? I think, like, as I said earlier, trying to throw bodies at problems and not sitting down and solving them in a more logical way. It's a costly problem, and it's unsustainable. So I would caution anybody listening, before you make a hire to fix something, see if there's another way that you can fix that through software, through better processes. I think another big failure for me, again, touched on this earlier, is just not communicating as clearly as I think that I am, and taking the time to make sure that somebody that I'm giving some directives to or talking about an idea really understands what it is that I mean when I'm talking about that. And then the third one, and this is the biggest one, and I still struggle with this to some degree, and that is not letting go of people fast enough. If you identify somebody is not the right fit for the organization anymore, if the organization's outgrown that person, there's the old adage, right? The people that got you here won't get you there. If there's not another place for them in the organization that makes fit, you need to offload them from the organization. And every time I've done that, eventually I drag my feet on those. I'll self-admit that. They've been relieved and we've been relieved, right? So those are the three failures that I've had that I'm working on: communication and overhiring, and then that last one, right? Knowing when it's not a good fit for the organization anymore, and making that making that move.
Yeah, that's one of the toughest ones, because usually this is a loyal team member who gives it their all every day, and you simply have outgrown their capabilities. And I always say, if you're not growing with us, you're not going with us. And most people get it, but it's just like the military. You can't stay a captain forever. If you don't make major, after 6, 8 years, you're out. And that's just the way it is in a growing organization. Now, there are big corporate organizations and big bureaucratic organizations where you can maintain the same skill level and hold that position for 25, 30 years. But it just doesn't work that way in a rapidly growing company. And I've had discussions with team members who said, well, why did you wait so long to terminate me? You knew I was failing, and I've been miserable, and I've been failing you, and I feel bad about how I'm failing the team. Why did you wait 3 months to do this? And, look, when it happens, I always like to help that person find another place where they can be successful. I like to give them a good reference. I usually pay a severance. I'm trying to, when we've outgrown someone and they just don't meet the needs of the team anymore, I don't want it to be a bad experience. I want them to be a happy alum who's going to refer clients to us, to cases to us, who says, you know what, that was a great 2, 3, 5, 10 years of my life that I really enjoyed. I love the team. And for some of them too, it's, they have a skill set that is valuable in the market. Help us help you. And I encourage my team to go interview other places. If you think there's a better opportunity for you or a better fit, go find it. Look, I'm here to help you on this journey as a leader. I want you to succeed. That is my moral obligation. And if I can't give you the success you want here, then let's find a place, because sometimes we have people that outgrow our organization. They get their PhD, they have a major accomplishment, and they realize like they want to pivot. They want to do something else. And then sometimes something bigger and better. And, I really want them to leave on the right terms. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. But if both parties are adults about it, saying, hey, look, it's been a great run. It's done. Let's talk about how we can move forward and how you're going to move forward and what we can do to help you. I think that's an easier way to do it than to let it die on the vine. But I've been in the same position where I have let team members stay on too long, and it's been a disservice to the organization, and it's been a disservice to them. And as a leader, that's where you absolutely fail. So, yeah, I think you nailed it with that one, Eric. So
yeah, that's that last real quick, John. That last one though, when you've got somebody and they've potentially outgrown their position here or the organization, I'm always so proud. And I've got lots and lots of people that I've worked with over the years, and to watch them flourish and grow and do great things out there in society at new companies and really be successful. It's one of the special treats for me when I see people that are leading other organizations that I've managed before, that I hired or that I coached or that I mentored, and they go out there and do that. It really is an incredible thing. And you said it doesn't always end that way. More often than not, it really doesn't. It's just a tough thing. But when it does, that's a fun thing. It really is. That's an exciting thing to see people out there go out and crush it.
Yeah, it's no different than having those junior soldiers that long after your military career is over, you see them surpass everything that you've ever done in the military. It's the same way in business, and it's such a great feeling. It's like seeing your kids succeed, right? It's like seeing your kid score the winning touchdown. It's like, wow, like I got to be a part of this leader's development, and that's so fulfilling. So Eric, thank you so much for sharing your journey on Veteran Led. All of your information will be in the show notes, but where can veterans learn more about OmniCommander or connect with Eric Isham?
You know what? Go to omnicommander.com. You can learn more about OmniCommander. If there's any veterans out there that are working at banks or credit unions, definitely go to omnicommander.com. Love for you to see the products and services that we've got. Love to learn more about your financial institutions. And I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So if you just, Eric Isham, there's a few of us out there. None of them are as handsome as me. So look up Eric Isham. You'll see the big smiling face at you there with the OmniCommander behind it. That's me. But yeah, love to connect. Again, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn communicating and connecting with the greater community there. Spend a lot of time with veterans. We do a lot of things with veterans here in Nashville, Santa Rosa Beach. So if you want to reach out and learn more about that, check it out. And again, John, I really appreciate the time. This was fun, and look forward to seeing you here in Nashville in a couple of months.
Awesome. And just for our listeners that are listening to this on a podcast, Eric does kind of look like the Wolf of Wall Street when I met him. Same hair.
Get with me offline. I'll tell you some fun DiCaprio stories when we're not being filmed.
Thank you for joining us today on Veteran Led, where we pursue our mission of promoting veteran leadership in business, strengthening the veteran community, and getting veterans all of the benefits that they earn. If you know a leader who should be on the Veteran Led podcast, report to our online community by searching @Veteran Led on your favorite social channels and posting in the comments. We want to hear how your military challenges prepared you to lead your industry or community, and we will let the world know. And of course, hit subscribe and join me next time on Veteran Led.